The English philosopher Jeremy Bentham is probably best known today for the fact that his mummified body is still on display at University College London on his old stomping grounds. Strange. Yet before he was a tacky tourist stop in London, prone to nearly 2 centuries of student pranks, Bentham was notable for proposing several inventive solutions to the social problems of the mid-19th century. One of those solutions was a creative, if troubling, plan for a prison, which he termed the Panopticon. True to its name, the Panopticon would be, in Bentham's imagination, a prison which would enable all prisoners to be watched simultaneously by a single individual. Built in a circle, there would be a central guard tower with a single guard, and all the prison cells would face it. The guard would use a series of lights flashing on and off to confuse the prisoners in each of their cells, and by doing so, the prisoners would have no idea when they were being observed and when they were not being observed. Bentham imagined that this would be the most efficient and certainly most hygienic way, and certainly most utilitarian way, of going about incarcerating people. He felt it would make for more efficient discipline in the prison system, and he described his project as, quote, a new mode of obtaining power of mind over mind in a quantity hitherto without example. According to our tradition, Bentham wasn't the first one to propose such an artifice. The kind of thing that would be used to observe and control mass amounts of people. Many sages, in fact, have read the story of the Tower of Babel in precisely the same spirit. They have read the motives of the tower's builders as being the establishment of unquestioned authority of a group of few over the many. We read, in fact, in the beginning of Genesis chapter 11, that after the flood was over, after human society had began to regroup, that a certain collection of people came together with their intent to build a tower with its head in heaven. The project, for not apparent reasons, offends God, who steps in to stop their progress, and as a result, spreads them over the face of the earth, scattering them to many countries and to many languages. The Torah seems to give this story as an etiology of why there are many languages, but perhaps there's more than a linguistics lesson that lurks behind the story. The episode of Migdal Bavel is so commonly explained as being about creating one language, or trying to engage in a society in which all people would cooperatively help in building a monument, that we often tell ourselves that the sin of the tower's builders was that hubris vis-a-vis heaven, that they attempted to reach God, prompting divine intervention. But we can also read this misguided construction project just like Bentham's Panopticon. In fact, many of our sages have. As we'll see, our tradition has repeatedly affirmed that the sin of the tower's builders was to attempt to establish the control by a small group of people over the populace through power and through surveillance. Genesis 11:4 tells us a little bit about the builders' motives. Vayomru hava nivnei lanu ir umigdal rosho v'shamayim v'na'aseh lanu shem pen nafutz al panei chol haaretz. And they said, come, let us build for ourselves a city, and a tower with its top in heaven, and we'll make for ourselves a name, lest we be spread over the face of the earth. It would seem from this that the motivation of the tower's builders is precisely to create communal unity, to gather all people together under the banner of this massive project. Yet many of the commentators see the builders as having considerably more nefarious motives in mind. Ovadia Saforno, in his comment on this verse, says that the builders sought not to create one language, but to install Nimrod as king over the entire human species. Saforno explains that Nimrod sought to reign over all humanity so that he could seek out all of them and know all of them. A later commentator, the Netziv, in his commentary Ha'emek HaDavar, tells us that the purpose of the tower's builders was to construct an edifice that would enable the rulers of it to observe all the people of the world at once, and to prevent them from moving to faraway lands. Their project, so the Netsiv says, was one that would ensure that dissidents could not set up separate communities. By watching them from this great tower, the builders would make themselves like God, able to see the hearts of every person, and thereby constrict their liberty, what we might call surveillance. Some are even more explicit than that, such as the modern Rabbi Yosef Dov Soloveitchik. He tells us what he believes the motives of the tower's builders to be. He said that they said, it's upon us to arrange a new order for the world. It's upon us to control a new society. It's upon us to rule over the cosmos and to organize new principles of the heavenly kingdom. They did this, Soloveitchik tells us, in order to realize their ideal, the subjugation of the whole world, to command everyone how to live and what to do, to separate families, to destroy the freedom of the individual and all values by which people live. Soloveitchik goes on to quote a famous episode in Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer, in which it tells us that the tower's builders cared more about the bricks with which they were building the tower than the people who were conscripted to do so. That when someone fell off the scaffolding and fell to their death, the tower's builders took no notice. But when a single brick would fall, they would weep and cry and wail and say, where will we get another brick? Then, in a surprisingly modern twist, Rabbi Soloveitchik says this: those evil ones, the generation of the tower, were like Mao Zedong and Khrushchev. They wanted to show their ability to overpower the meaning of the individual. Arguably, Soloveitchik's vision has come to life today. In many ways, we live in our own kind of panopticon: security cameras, biotechnology, facial recognition software, and ubiquitous government surveillance, all that ensure that we are essentially faced with the same dilemma of Benthos inmates. We can assume we could be watched at any time, but we can't tell when we're being observed and when we're not. Brave souls have stepped forward to expose the level of casual surveillance which has become commonplace in today's society. And whistleblowers have fought to show the degree to which we are living victims of Bentham's utilitarian designs. Yet long before contemporary society awoke to the severity of our own surveillance, our Torah and our tradition has warned us about the power of mind over mind. These readings of the Tower of Babel story should grab our attention. Could it be that this story, which we so often attribute simply to human hubris, belies something much deeper? Perhaps the tower which reached to heaven had little to do with heaven after all, but is instead a cautionary tale about the desire of the few to impose their will upon the many. Perhaps God intervened not because God's liberty was threatened, but because human liberty was. Perhaps this tower of terror that we read about is a call to affirm individual freedom and spirituality, and to resist the authority of those who want to, like Soloveitchik warned, overpower the meaning of the individual. In my own struggles, I've often felt like Judaism does not care a great deal for the path of the individual. The needs and the priorities of the community always seem to usurp the private path to religion. I came to my faith and to this building largely on my own. Neither the family to which I was born nor the community in which I grew up put me here. I often walk the lonely path of the spiritual seeker. More than ever, we are faced with the reality that there are innumerable individuals who are seeking a religious life outside the bounds of the organized community. Chancellor Eisen has termed this search for the sovereign self, a term which is often very foreign to many Jewish organizations. Moreover, rather than make room for them to find their way to God, more often than not, we have only doubled down on our institutions, on our dogmas, our doctrines, and our endless competing claims of authority. Many of my colleagues, and many of you here, I've been shocked to find that I don't particularly care for Chassidut. After learning that I study and I teach Kabbalah, and all the lovely people from Oceanside Jewish Center here can attest to the fact that they are subjugated to Zohar once a month, people are shocked to find that I learn all that Kabbalah, and it seems to be my primary interest in Judaism, yet I don't care for Chassidut. You won't hear me quote many Hasidic rabbis, and you won't hear me praise the value of Dveikus. The reason is simple. The idea of the tzaddik is abhorrent to me. The idea that there could be an individual who has the right to tell other people how to live their lives and what their spiritual journey should look like seems to me to be totally foreign to the spirit of Judaism. I don't want a human being to tell me what to do or what to believe. That's why I'm in this religion. I believe that God has already done that. The hubris of believing that we can make ourselves authorities over one another, that we can set ourselves up like the guard in the center of the panopticon, is tearing us apart. So how can I be a rabbi who rejects the authority of one over many? Who reads the story of the Tower of Babel as a caution against authoritarianism and an affirmation of individualism? After all, I'll leave here, God willing, at the end of this year, and go out and be a Mara Da'atra, an authority for the community, and the people to which I serve. Yet I do so with the heavy caution of Migdal Bavel, with an awareness of the pitfalls and dangers of attempting to tell others how to live their lives. I do so knowing that I don't wish my community to be a panopticon, nor one which leaves out the spiritual path of the individual. When I came for my admissions interview here at JTS many years ago, I had the same anxieties and worries as most. Fear that the seminary would see how little I knew. Fear that they would realize that actually I didn't know anything about Judaism or Hebrew. And of course the legendary paralyzing anxiety that I would be asked to make a bracha over the glass of water put in front of me. But amidst that fog of nervous memory from that day, there is one thing in particular that I remember. That Dahlia Bernstein was assigned to sit with me as the admissions intern before I went into my interview. I think primarily to make sure I didn't run away. Dahlia asked me that morning, she said, "So what kind of rabbi do you want to be?" I said, "Pulpit, I think." And she looked puzzled and said, No. I mean, what do you want your rabbinate to look like?" I sure didn't have an answer then. I didn't have an answer for a lot of those questions then. But 2 years ago, just before Yom Kippur, Dahlia made a Facebook post in which she asked her friends to identify themselves by 6 words, to describe their mission and vocation in only 6 words, as a kavanah for the holidays. There, sitting in front of my computer, I found the 6 words that I should have answered Dahlia those years before. I decided that the 6 words that described me best were that I was a tour guide to the spiritual self. That is, in fact, what I wish to be. We talk a lot here at the seminary about pastoral authority, but to me that phrase is largely a contradiction in terms. Truly being a pastor, guiding the lost sheep and caring for the flock, does not depend on authority. It depends on our ability to make room for the individual in the midst of the community, and to resist the pressures of peers, society, and often our own institutions in order to accept the radical independence of the individual. I take the caution of the Tower of Babel story to heart. It's too easy for us to make ourselves an authority, to use power and privilege to set ourselves up inside a panopticon, prescribing others' behavior and beliefs. I don't know if I want to be a Mara Da'atra. I do know that I want to be a Moreh Derech. To teach the path that I have walked to others, not to build towers, but to build roads. To clear the overgrown trails which lead into the heart of Judaism, and to show the solitary seeker the path presented before them. Kadish Rabbanan. Amen. ועמד ירח ירתה וימליך מלכותי, ויצמח פורקני ויתערב משיחי. וחייכון ויומכון ושאים בכל בית ישראל, בגלה ובזמן קריב יקראו. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי בקודשה. לעילה מן כל ברכתה, שירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, ואמירן בעלמה וימרו אמן. על ישראל ועל רבנן ועל תלמידיהן, ועל כל תלמידיהן, להזכין באורייתא קדישתה, דיבה ג'הדין ודי בכל אתר ואתר. יהי לנה ולהון חינה וחיסתא, ורחמי מנקדת מרי שמיה וערה, ואמרו אמן. יהי שלמה רבה מן שמיה, חיים וסבא וישובה ונחמה, ושזרה ורפואה וגאולה וסליחה, וחברה ורווח והצלה. לנו ולכל עמו ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום בברומיו, הוא ורחמיו יעשה שלום, עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. There are snacks in the next room. Please join us. Please stick around. If you want to tour the seminary and you're from Oceanside or anywhere else, I'll be doing so at 3.